Hi everybody, my name's Christy Mansfield. I'm the CEO and co-founder of SEER.
Hi, and I'm Jenny Atkinson, founder and CEO of Little Scribe. And we have met for the second time in our careers about 12 months ago, but we'll get more into that as we progress.
So today what we want to share with you is how we as two founders and good friends and collaborators have supported each other through the coronavirus and the pivot that we both made in our businesses.
Yeah, and it's been an interesting time because we literally caught up the same day that there was an announcement nationally that we would be going down into lockdown. So the first thing that we did in digesting that was get together and literally map out a plan very, very quickly on the back of a napkin.
So I remember that day very well, Jenny, in your lounge room with kids running around and dogs and, everything that makes up the incredible moment that we had that day. And we talked about what should we do through a crisis, and we reflected on the fact that we'd been through crises before through our careers. And we really reflected on what others had done to succeed through crises. Do you remember that?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the parallel life that we've kind of lived, where we were not necessarily conscious of each other, but we were in exactly the same field going through that. So we unpacked, and we'll talk about that in a minute, some of the key things we observed and how we could lean on that knowledge and the benefit of hindsight. And I think the other aspect that was unique to us, and a lot of startups can relate to this, I remember going, this was the year where we'd done all the groundwork and we were really going to take off.
Yeah.
And we were exhausted. So before COVID turned up, I can tell you, we had put all of our blood, sweat and tears into this, and we were really excited about what I call a normal year and not feeling like startup. Well, that was a little delusional.
Yeah, a normal year where we were going to hockey stick our growth, et cetera, et cetera. But of course, COVID came along. So why don't we just go through what we're going to talk about today and invite all of you to ask questions. We're really excited to answer some of your questions, and we'll be really honest and candid about what that experience was like for us.
And I think it was that rawness and realness in that moment that has served what we've done. And so it works really well for us to get those direct questions to be able to give feedback and see what we thought of it. I've just got a little delay on my screen here, but we can go through the 6 things that we were going to address today. So the first, just can't get that clicker. I'm not sure if the tech guys behind there can see.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. So here are the 6 pieces that we'll be breaking down today. First was the COVID, the rapid responsive context. So how do we quickly come to terms with what was turning up and was now our new reality? The important part then was execution and excellence. So we'll be able to give you some really practical case studies of how that came to life. Grit is a word that we use a bit, and it's the unreasonable questions we asked of reasonable people, including ourselves, because there's some extraordinary things that turned up. Some of the big moments for you were some of the government contracts and some of the social impacts. We got a call from the UN. Who would have expected that? And then we're going to move into COVID and life ahead, and what do we actually see moving forward? Love to take some questions, and then we actually want to wrap it up because we've been thinking, what's the single biggest impact and opportunity that sits for us separately and potentially together, and thinking like a startup, thinking like an innovator of what we'd really appreciate and what we'd like to see the next 12 months unfold.
Great. So I guess thinking about the context, and here's our beautiful napkin strategy on a page. Sorry about my handwriting, Jenny. How did you interpret that?
I actually got it all. So I'm a very visual person. So it just cemented what was deep inside us and came out. So there were 3 core pillars that came out of that conversation. And that was reflecting on what we felt we'd seen others do really well historically.
Yeah.
And I'd also spent 48 hours consistently on webinars and calls to colleagues in Singapore, Europe, and America. And I asked this single question. And they're about 6 weeks ahead of us with respect to going into lockdown and coming to terms and reality of what COVID meant. And the question I asked was this one: what would you do differently now knowing what you know 6 weeks down the track? And that was a really critical question that served us both well. So let's maybe talk about that piece and how that helps structure some of these questions and what we were pulling on when we talk about historical disruption and
Yeah.
etc.
So, what was really going through my mind was how can we be of service in this moment? We didn't know what was going to unfold, of course. All of us remember that weekend prior to lockdown, and we were coming to terms with the fact that people were going to be working from home. What did this mean for business, and how long was it going to take? And so, from our perspective, because our business is very much a values-based business, we were thinking about how can we be in service. We were really fortunate because we'd already created our onboarding process, which was set up for enabling people to come straight through into SEER and on board as a customer. And so when we talked about seeding the market and making SEER standard free to users who could use data effectively for decision making through COVID, it was a really easy decision for us to make. However, from a technical perspective and from a values perspective, it did change the business model quite a lot. And we were aware that we were going to go through a period of great learning, adoption, and being in service to communities who we are working with to give them easier access to data. And certainly what we have learned is that through a crisis, data is as important as food and water and shelter. And that information became really critical over that period of time. But we thought, let's open up SEER, make it available, work through our partners to share that we were doing that, talk to our existing customers around how we're going to value add to their business and to the work that they were doing in communities, and then what was the big opportunity, how we were going to engage with government to really take advantage of, a greater willingness to share data at this point in time, and that's what we executed.
I think it's interesting for me to just say, can you quickly share what SEER actually does as a business, because maybe that's not context yet that's been provided.
And SEER is a data platform that enables people to easily access open data, public data, and share data at a community level to improve outcomes and make decisions for local communities. We're a problem-solving platform for local communities.
So going through those 3 steps for Little Scribe, and we're an educational writing platform and we bring purpose to writing. So we're working with schools. We also work with homes, and it's around escalating and engaging kids in writing. For context, for the last 10 years in every state and in every school year, the ability of our kids to write what they know has gone backwards. So in short, their capacity is not at the same as ours. And this has been a really significant issue in the education community. So the first thing that we did is I learnt very quickly in the questions from COVID when we talked about being of service to the education system, is we released one of our products for free to teachers. And it was unique because we already connected parents, kids and teachers. And what we did in scaffolding that support straight away is I heard this one question, which I asked before, and the answer was we didn't support parents and get them as part of our team in this ongoing and continuous support of learning. So a lot of focus went on to the kids, getting everything ready and setting up and getting through logistics. But we didn't take a breath to say, hey, mum and dad, this is about what you're about to live through. Here are the systems, here are some tips and tricks and some hints on how to keep sanity and progress for your kids. So every single one of our programs was instantly converted into mum and dad speak. So there were tips and tricks. And the second piece is there was a full connection between mum, dad and kids, so they're all on the same page and can follow that learning journey. So that instantly gave some comfort to teachers that felt, oh my God, I've got to suddenly get writing and all these activities together, and how do I get the feedback and see the kids' journey? The second thing was supporting our existing customers. That was the second pillar. For us, we have a lot of country and city schools, and we were doing a specific program in partnership with Royal Far West called My Life Story. And it connects literacy and wellbeing and kids under pressure from the drought, floods, and other kind of natural disasters. We're doing a program to write My Life Story. So we needed to make sure that there was continuity. And one of the things that we were delighted with in that process is that this became one of the core educational programs for kids, and I'll get to some of the outstanding impacts that we've been able to track. Now we're about 6 to 9 months from that. And then the third was the big opportunities. And how can we play with the big guys and government and organisations and make an impact? I think one of the things that both organisations had in common, incredibly nimble, really good system and database in place. And so we could respond and curate content and create solutions in a really rapid period of time that met what people were looking for today. Not next week, not next month, literally in days and weeks, not months and years. So that decision making, we actually gave a whole lot of benefit to large organisations that weren't used to working that quickly in coming together with really big solutions. So that was the 6-month, 3-pillar plan for both of us, and we can talk a little bit more about the detail of that.
So we nutted this out literally within an afternoon. I was on the phone to my co-founder and our board, my chair, pretty much straight away, letting people know I really felt that we could make a major difference to the communities that we were working with, as well as more broadly the not-for-profit, policy communities, and many others that could use data in a way that was going to give them better insight around vulnerabilities through COVID, and that's indeed what happened. We also coincidentally, and these things are always coincidental, aren't they, how it happens and how it transpires, that Monday morning after that weekend, I had a meeting set up already that I'd set up 6 weeks before with the Chief Data Scientist of New South Wales, Dr. Ian Opperman. And from there, we talked with Ian about what we were working on and the analytics that we could provide him. And that started really a very intensive 8 to 10 week program of work, working with the Data Analytics Centre, with Ian Opperman daily, sometimes twice daily, to provide analytics into the New South Wales Treasury and also into the ACT government. And what we really did through that time was to identify the most vulnerable communities across Australia according to financial impacts, health and social impacts. And as a result of that, has made a massive difference in policy and decision making through the crisis and now into recovery. What we're really trying to do is give people at the grassroots through this work more confidence, power and efficiency in their decision making. And so one of the other things that we did concurrently was to talk to all of our users, community organisations, not-for-profits, local government agencies, others working in low-income communities who were already working with us to understand how they were collaborating to respond through the crisis. And we worked very closely with our customers all over Australia, including those customers in Bourke, who you can see some of the pictures there, Mount Druitt, and in Shepparton, to provide the collaborations that and organisations making decisions with data and the sorts of things they were doing, working out down to a street level, where were the most vulnerable people, who would benefit most from food parcels, where were people most likely to be affected by job losses in the early days. And so as a result, our users were able to respond quickly. In addition to that, we made CF free to new users, and they were using public data, open data, to make those decisions. And these are some of the outputs. So I talked about being able to identify down to a suburb and street level the vulnerabilities in our community. And this one is one of the vulnerability maps that was used across Australia quite intensively at the beginning of the crisis and throughout. And then, then we did another piece of work for the analytics centres. And this work helped us understand and pinpoint the most vulnerable suburbs across Australia according to those occupations and those communities that were at risk of job losses and household stress. All of this was available through our platform, so people were making local decisions based on data and insights in a way really that they hadn't done before. And so we're really pleased to be able to provide free access to the open data sets, which have proven to be hugely valuable across the sector throughout this crisis.
So just listening to some of the things that you're talking about there, one of my observations, and I'm curious if this occurred for you as well, is the profile of risk had changed. And so where people were risked to implement new ideas or concepts because we were comfortable with current processes, my observation in the things that we were solving here is all organisations and all people came together, and risk was almost put aside because the risk had become so big and the need so big to support people, because we're getting really into humanities and we're getting into welfare and we're getting into access and equality for all during this time. And I really enjoyed where those barriers and those mindsets were put to the side.
Yeah.
And the common cause of impact everyone came to. And there was some really quick decision making, some smart decision making, and some innovative decision making that came through that, and collaboration that I thought was quite extraordinary. Was that the same for you?
I think certainly there's a greater willingness today to collaborate and, in our world, share data than there's ever been before. So it removed those barriers of we can't do it, we're not allowed to do it. In fact, it's happening at a grassroots level all the time right now. And because local communities are responsible for recovery and for building back, then that data sharing is going to be critical as people do that, to ensure that, you know, they're making the best decisions and investing the incredible stimulus in the best ways possible.
So within Little Scribe, some of the innovation that came through that is we work with some of Australia's leading authors, and we have a program that's the first in the world, which is they write the first 2 pages of a story and then students write the rest of the story. And our platform brings all of that writing together and they become co-authors. When I reached out to authors around the country, and I've got a photo just at the end here, they all came on board, and I said, right, how are we going to connect with these kids? How do we keep writing, which is fundamental in the bedrock of every education? You cannot do maths, science, geography, history without the skills of writing in place. And those early years of education are absolutely important and crucial. And for some people that may not realise, when a teacher gets a new kid from a holiday, literally 6 to 12 weeks, there's a regression. There's loss in skill. And so there was a really big concern about how do we keep that continuity. So jumped on with the authors and said, how do we Zoom and how do we YouTube and how do we connect this skill that you've got and model it and share very specific writing activities and challenges with the educational slant of our team, who are all educators, and pull that together. And so our first event, we ended up producing a whole lot of videos that were free that could be used at home, 45-minute videos, all chunked down with very specific and explicit instruction to students. One of the unique things about it, instead of just talking like this where we had an author, we also had an illustrator side by side. So we were creating all these visual memories, and James was doing an extraordinary job in writing the words, in writing the brainstorming, in illustrating some of the concepts. So for those kids where English is a second language or it was going too fast, they could slow down and look at it later and grab that muscle memory to add the words to it. We ended up having 100,000 views of those videos within literally about 2 or 3 weeks, and they're consistently used.
So, and Jenny, you know, because it was an incredible time for parents and for teachers to figure out how to do this.
Yeah, it was. And so I think that's what we did really differently, is we had both the parent and the teacher head and consistently looking at, we are all parents working at the same time. We've also got educators in there. How do we create and support this juggle so that it's not such a struggle? And that was our really simple objective with that. This then bore into and morphed into another program called the Mini Writing Festival. Mini is a little ironic because we ended up having 35,000 kids around the country for a week participate in 16 hours of live videos across classrooms. Some of those classrooms were open for business, and some of them we had our schools in Victoria that were in lockdown. All of those kids got to come in live, see the authors and the illustrators work together, give them a writing challenge connected to Book Week with CBCA, which was important in creating continuity. It was a festival, it was fun and it was enjoyable, and it had very explicit writing activities. Every single activity had a different theme created to curious creatures and wild minds, and had a very specific writing skill. It could have been historical settings, alliteration, poetry, characterisation, factual text. There was a whole range of things that we targeted, knowing by the different stages and ages was on point right now for those kids and what the teachers were looking to lean on and use to spark interest. So that was one of our bigger events. 16 hours of live video. We had to go and get a hotel room, COVID the whole thing, go into lockdown for the week to be able to produce that. And we had 90 seconds of moment where we all went, oh my God, it's not going to work. But it did, and we managed to work that through. I was comforted when I saw, ironically, the Victorian Premier there the next day turn upside down on one of his live feeds. That made me feel a lot more comfortable that our little hiccup was okay.
Well, it sort of speaks to what we wanted to talk around execution and excellence, because when we moved into, once we were implementing the strategy, it was really around a cadence and an execution excellence that didn't hold up for us for almost three months. Yeah. And I'm sure for yourselves that was also the case. I remember calling you throughout. Jenny, you're still working Sunday morning. I mean, we didn't stop.
It was relentless.
But through that, we learned so much and we gained so much.
Absolutely. And I think what we both had in common, or certainly from my perspective, is purpose. And we saw a lot of people there, and we had a lot of colleagues that didn't have work. And so we were super busy. And I think we've gone into a time now when you've got those that are probably overworked and those that are looking for work. And so we're incredibly conscious to say, yep, we're stretched, but we're happy to be stretched. And aren't we incredibly fortunate and lucky to have something that people need and adds value at this point in time?
Yeah, we felt very much the same. But, we talked earlier about what would you do differently? And I think when we went into the crisis, perhaps we should have understood, reflecting on it, that this crisis may not have, lasted 2 to 4 weeks. At that time, we weren't sure how long it was going to last. And in fact, it turned out to be quite some time to execute in a relentless pace. At that pace. So my reflection and learning is a process on how to execute, so that not only can you deliver on the promise for existing customers, but the well-being of the team is extremely important through that time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I had a sense of how long it would be because I was looking overseas, and I think Australia has always been a little bit of an outlier with respect to the way we've handled it. It's just been extraordinary and impressive. But because we had the contact offshore, we had no delusions as to some of those kids are 6 months still not in school. And so there were some really complex things there. And I'm looking now at the partnerships, and the partnerships for us have been really important to get that intelligence, to get that insight. And one of the calls that I made that's for another conversation is I actually ended up calling a gentleman by the name of Bruce Johnson, who's a very good family friend, and he was 2IC in the police force in New South Wales, and he managed every single major disaster you'd know, Thredbo, the Grafton Bass Crush, the floods in Wollongong. And I said to him, look, this is not at that scale, but I'm really curious, how do you manage yourself and your team when you know you're about to be in for the long haul under unknown levels of requirement? And that comes to the unreasonable things of reasonable people conversation. And I have to say, the team that we had, and I know that's for yourself, when I look at this partnership, Earth School, for example, is part of the UN, and within 3 weeks we had partnered with the UN, BBC, the TED Ed platform, and about 30 or 40 other organisations around the globe, and we're the only Aussie company invited to participate. And we had then put together 130 programs, which was just thousands of connected bits of content, from video to reference to worksheets for kids, and 1 million kids around the world participated in that program. And that's the team that, the unreasonable request was, can we do this in 3 weeks? It had never happened before, of reasonable people. And they've just been extraordinary. I've been incredibly proud and privileged to just see some amazing talent come to the fore. With the land, ClickView, the Jane Goodall Institute, Royal Far West, and the Children's Book Council of Australia. All of those things allowed us to layer an approach that meant schools weren't getting another piece of information or another thing. It was a really well-through concept and educational content that allowed them to layer that and create continuity. And you've got to remember, what we were seeing is suddenly everyone was throwing stuff saying, we can help. And they're like, well, I actually just need a breath to be able to digest this. So we were very conscious of our communication, saying a couple of things. One, lean on us. Tell us when you're ready to connect. The program we did with Royal Far West was meant to finish at the end of term 2. It's still going, and those schools can take as long as they need to because those kids are so committed. It'll turn up at the end of term 4. So I was saying, lean on us. The pace is where you can determine and just tell us what support looks like. And the other one that we were quite conscious of, and we spoke about this, was for different schools and different kids, there was a different reaction. So there was the word that was constantly used, unprecedented. And that has a tendency to presume the impact. And so we used the word unfamiliar. We agreed that it was unfamiliar, but we could not presume what that meant for other people. So we didn't want to add, inflame, or create context that was not appropriate for different people. But unfamiliar allows anyone to actually interpret that in the way that works for them.
So let's talk about the grit part of it. Let's talk about that, because I think certainly it really does require some digging deep from the team to be able to maintain that pace, but also achieve the vision and keep a very careful eye on, what we did anyway, is keep a very careful eye on how we were in service, what we were offering, and being able to meet the needs of our users. So as a result, we set out to seed the market. We grew our user base phenomenally and has enabled us to learn so much about how people want to work with data and how they use our platform to get the insights that they need. I would say, having said that, through the period of crisis is an incredible opportunity for scale, to learn how to scale and to grow. And yet we hadn't put in place some of those scaffolding to enable the scale that we were experiencing. So we'd gone from, maybe 400 users to now more than 3,000 users in a very short period of time. And so we got to learn a lot about what people liked and what they didn't like, what the value was in what we were offering. And, through that was incredible learnings. At the same time, lots of keeping up with the needs of our customers and users.
And so what about grit for you personally? What did that mean?
Yeah, grit for me personally is really all about finding the balance between a founder and being a CEO, and setting a framework and creating a masterpiece within that framework and continuing to go forward and saying to the team and to our users, we understand, we're moving forward, we're going to make it.
Yep.
And for me personally, it was really about finding balance. So through this process, and in fact, my dad died during the crisis as well. So I found being with my children and taking up surfing has helped a great deal to enable that balance, which has been something I'll take forward.
Perfect.
And you?
Grit for me meant a couple of things. Really reaching out to people like yourself and others that were founders. I think there's this thing when you're a founder that there's this stoicism that's required, and that you're protecting people and everyone in the business from the things that you're balancing and the stresses that you've got. Cash flow.
Yeah.
The right people. I'm going to say yes, can we actually deliver on time? And those are the things that keep you up at night and you internally digest. So I actually leaned on some people and said, I need you to keep an eye on me because I don't know how I'm going to handle this, and I suspect I'll need someone to tap me on the shoulder and say, time to take a break. I did that within the team quite consciously and some people outside of the team. So being really explicit in asking for help. And I also arranged for 1 or 2 mentors around the team to support the rest of the team, because sometimes you can't always talk to the same person and share that shitty day, that bad moment where you are just worn out, tired, etc. So I tried to create some people around that they could lean on and feel comfortable to just download whatever was required, knowing it would stay there very safely, and know that it was a moment, and if not a moment, work through how to bring that to me if they felt like they were challenged with that. So they were some of the things that I did. And then, the kids, they just keep it really real and tell you the truth.
Oh, yeah.
So there's nothing like having a stakeholder conversation with an 11 and a 14-year-old. So that keeps it going.
We had some amusing moments around the table while we were delivering insights and talking to the data analytics centres in different states at the same time, having the children run past, ask for food, where's the latest information that they need, etc., for schooling. The other thing it really taught me was the importance of listening really intently and supporting the team, because everybody provided a huge effort. And the board was incredible, our investors were incredible, and the team were amazing. So being able to be a great support through that process and listening and helping people get what they needed through that time, and understanding that people are also, of course, going through their own personal challenges, not only working from home, but the fact that they're going through the unprecedented experience of coronavirus.
Yeah, I think we're really lucky in our particular environment that we're getting to see all the work coming back from the kids, and we see that in real time. And so what happens is they just cut through the messages. And we have some examples where this kid had been working on their book and it ended up sitting next to the banana in the bag and it got squashed. And so we got a call from a mum saying, can we get some more books, because he's never been more proud. He's never written before, but we can't have a banana squashed book in there. We've had probably the thing that I'm personally most proud of and will be launching in 2 weeks' time is we're going to Cobargo. And Cobargo is one of the towns that we'll all remember was impacted quite severely, and they had loss of life, property, animals, businesses in there, and they're one of our schools. Those kids had planned to do a 12-page book. It's now a 40-page book.
Yeah.
And it's about to be published, and these are the examples that we love. So when it comes to grit, that just cuts through and gives you perspective, that if you think you're having a hard day, just imagine that context of prior to coming to COVID, you've been through a fire, you've been through a drought, and these kids have got the ability to share their stories with such honesty and such grace and humour and wit that we're really lucky in our platform that if you want to just, get a reality check, you go and check out the writing from the kids and you'll quickly realign how bad your day is.
Doesn't it make you more determined as well to achieve the vision, because you know the value and what it can do?
Absolutely.
That's certainly been the case for me. I don't know if we're able to take some questions, but we've got 10 minutes or so.
Yeah. Any questions coming through? Can you see any there?
So I'm just curious, where are you now then? We've talked a lot about how we made the decision, what we've done, how we executed, some of the challenges personally, what we needed to do for the team. As a result for us, we were able to secure some major opportunities with data analytics centres and work with government in a new way that we hadn't done. We've been able to expand our work into many other communities, and now we can see a real opportunity for scale up for us. What about yourselves?
Yeah, we're the same. Effectively, what we've done is compressed a whole lot of product development that really met the needs of the customer in a short period of time. So we had a really deep writing program, and then we've done a series of short, sharp writing programs, teacher toolkits, the co-author program, and weekly Scribe. So effectively, in short, what does it mean? Every single writing activity that you as a teacher could imagine you'd like to do in the next 12 months, we've taken care of, connected it to all the cross-curricular and all the different writing types. So term 4 is when schools are making decisions for next year. So we're really focused this term on connecting with as many of those schools that we've been working through for the last 12 months, 2 years. So that's the first piece. We've also got interest from offshore. Even the other day, just a request to look at a partnership, and they've got 53 million subscribers because they love what our platform does and how can we take that to market. So we are about scale. Within scale, it means building a team to be able to manage that scale, and it's a combination of good account management, sales team and technical team for us in particular. So that's the core for us over the next 12 months, is take that product really to market on scale and build a team that can continue that innovation connected to our philosophy around making a real difference and writing being quite purposeful and connected to meaningful, chunky themes, whether it's the environment, whether it is co-author and programs where you're writing with authors. So that content and what the inspiration is will always change and be fresh from a perspective for our business.
I've been thinking a lot about how incredible it's been, the speed of innovation and partnerships. What probably would have taken years has been a few months. And, you know, on the agenda, we're talking about, you know, free childcare. We've seen an increase in New Start.
Yep.
Things that wouldn't have seemed viable or possible before that, or were taking a long time to get there. And in our world, data sharing at a grassroots, at a community level, is something that is exploding all over Australia. And it's an incredible time to really take advantage of that and to build back better. Because we all want to build back better. You know, we've had, you know, a huge amount of investment from governments, federal government and state governments around Australia, around the stimulus and the budget, of course. So from our perspective, we want to take advantage of that and work in communities to use data to build back better. So we were thinking a lot about, you know, what is our big dream and our wish. And our dream is to create data infrastructure across all of our communities so that open data blended with local insights can really drive a better outcome for people. So for us, just a small amount of investment, say the 50 most vulnerable communities around Australia, with a $5 million investment from government each year to help with that recovery, would make a massive difference in terms of being able to make sure those communities were doing the right things for the right people at the right time. And data is an essential part of that. So, you know, a huge amount of investment going in needs to be better directed. And this is this opportunity to build back better. And that's our ask to government.
Yeah, and we're the same. So we both asked ourselves this question. And, you know, for $5 million for Little Scribe as contracts, not as a grant, not as a handout, not to build something, to deliver what we've already produced that impacts and makes a difference in the education system, is simply the thing that would allow us to create stability, to allow us to grow in a way that would make a fundamental difference. So specifically, what would that mean for us? We'd be employing at least 40 to 50 full-time people. We'd connect with 250,000 kids around the country. We'd be doing live festivals. We did the largest one this year. We know that we can make that significantly bigger. We would see an extraordinary amount of content in our platform that can be used for teachers to see great writing modelled by not just authors but by students, and programs coming out of classrooms in other areas that they can lean on and borrow and be inspired. It means that from the recent research from some of NESA and the Catholic Church University, where 40% of teachers don't feel comfortable and skilled to teach writing, we can elevate that skill level instantly. And it also means for those teachers that are incredibly capable, we're going to save them an extraordinary amount of time. So that 5 million specifically for us is about employment. It's about stability. It's about reaching, because to get to those schools or to get to those communities, it is a minefield of time, and time is our biggest barrier to success. So if we could just compress that time with an immediate contract of sale where people could opt in and use our services, that would be the next level of innovation and transformation for us as a business.
It sounds exciting.
Yeah.
I know you're going to make it. We've got some questions.
Yeah.
As a commercial enterprise, both of us have interfaced with government. Yourselves with the Department of Education, ourselves with multiple different agencies, federally and state. What were your lessons? So we don't have long.
Main lessons is get to the chase very quickly about how you can help them move quickly. What you can do as a small business and an innovative thought leadership group and technology is make impact here and now, and allow them to work with the bureaucracy and the problems. Just be the smarts in the team of how we can right now make a difference and help you get there quickly.
That's 100% it. It's absolutely speed, being able to demonstrate what's possible from our side, what's possible with data, open data. These kinds of analytics hadn't been done before. Helping governments pinpoint the most vulnerable communities, helping them model those out, and doing that in such a way so that we were turning around within 24 hours, which is something that was unprecedented previously. And being able to collaborate across those agencies as well and demonstrate to policymakers the difference that data can really make, and sharing, the importance of sharing. So all of those were the lessons. We've got another question, Jenny. Thinking about this year, what's the one thing you'd hang your hat on?
Yep.
What has made you most chuffed and made you realise you were on track?
Yeah, look, I mentioned it before. It's these kids in the country and city that are swapping stories, and hearing parents and teachers talk about not just that they're writing, but they're loving it. Not just that they're writing, but they're getting better at it. Not just that they're writing and doing well at it, but they're proud of it and they want to show it. The fact that we've got the land every week sharing kids writing from the country, the fact that we've got the UN highlighting this kid's work as part of the program, and we've changed the model where kids writing is revered, respected and read. So the fact that I can see so much of their writing being read and they want to keep writing, that's what I'm most chuffed about.
For me, I know that data can make a massive difference in decision-making in communities to improve people's lives. And what I'm chuffed about is demonstrating that we can do data sharing at the grassroots, which has never been done before, and we're doing that in an automated way for communities and building new infrastructure, because that's helping them make better decisions, come together, have more power, more confidence and efficiency to really ultimately improve lives for people and benefit all of society. So taking advantage of what has been a very challenging period of time for all of us to ultimately build back better.
And yes, we're working on some projects together. We can talk about that next time.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in.